Hey everybody, Rob Hogue, Bass Stalker Fishing. I got a great tip for you intermediate guys today that'll really elevate your fishing abilities here. When I switched to fishing like this, I definitely I climbed a couple rungs on the ladder. I feel with my consistency and with the production. Um, One of the things I see a lot when I'm out fishing, and I don't fish big lakes. I don't have a big fancy boat. Not yet. That's gonna come a little later. But I do fish a lot, and one of the things I see a lot is you'll be motoring down the lake, and you'll see a nice bank full of laydowns, and there'll be a boat in front of me, and they'll motor on over, and they'll park right up on the laydown and start making flips. And laydowns are great. They're a great place to catch fish. But if you fish them incorrectly, you're not going to catch as many fish as you probably could. Um, and you're not gathering any information fishing them like that. Uh, so I drew a little diagram to kind of show you guys today how to effectively fish cover, and it's any type of cover, laydowns, stump fields, weeds, lily pads, whatever. It's a basic concept, but how to effectively fish cover and what information you can gather from the fish you do catch in that cover. So be nice with the diagram. It's on a dry erase board. It was quick, but you'll get the point. So this is my diagram here. Well, let me back it up so you can see it. So this is just a laydown. It's a blue laydown, but now what you need to understand is fish are going to be in one of four activity levels at any given time. They're going to be active, and that means they're actually out there chasing down bait fish and chasing down food. And that doesn't happen a lot, and it's normally for short periods of time. And then you'll have fish in a neutral activity level, and what that is they're either resting, they're either digesting, they're not out for a meal, but they're not going to turn down a meal either. Those fish are still relatively easier to catch. And then you have your inactive fish, and you have inactive fish who go deep in cover, and you have inactive fish who go out into open water and suspend. And you'll have to fish for those two types differently. And that's what this chart's going to represent. You have your inactive suspended fish, you have your inactive deep cover fish, you have your neutral fish, which like to hang on the outside edges of cover, and then you have your aggressive fish, your feeding fish, which are going to be on the very outside of cover, and they're actually running down bait. So like I was saying earlier, if you were a boat and you came in and you parked right up on that laydown and you start flipping, you're missing out on all these fish out here. And if the fish are in an aggressive pattern, you're not catching any of them. You're only catching the stragglers that might be inside the cover. So what I like to do is, if you come up to like your first couple laydowns of the day, you motor on over, you stay to the outside, and you make your casts on the outside. And I like to use square bill crankbaits, spinner baits, chatterbaits, swim baits, and you fish that outside, and you're trying to see if there's any fish that are actively feeding right now. And then you would move in and you'd start fishing those edges with either a jig, or edges of the tree are great for square bills, because you can deflect them off the trunks, and a lot of times that deflection is going to trigger those inactive fish. Or those neutral fish, I'm sorry. And then when you move in even more, after you're done fishing the outsides, then you move in and you start flipping the inside of that tree. So if you were to move up to fish a laydown, and you started catching fish on the outside, and once you stopped catching fish, you moved in and started fishing the edges and caught a couple fish, and then you went deep in the tree and didn't catch anything. Now you know when you go to that next laydown, you're going to fish the outside and you're going to fish the edges, because that's what you did on the first one. The first couple trees, I would still fish deep in the tree, But then after a couple, if it's holding to that pattern, now you know all your other laydowns in that general area of the lake. You can fish the outside and you can fish the edges because you know those fish are in a neutral state. Now, if you go up to the laydown and you catch nothing on the outside and you're having to flip deep and hop in it really slow, then you know the rest of those laydowns you're going to go, because those fish are inactive, you're going to fish deeper in the cover. If you're marking fish, if you have some kind of electronics and you're marking fish suspended on the outside, then you'll know you're going to have to fish some kind of suspended bait and either go for a reaction strike or you're going to have to go for a very slow presentation, just trying to coax those fish to bite. Another thing that the activity level will show, that the difference in the activity levels isn't only where they hold to cover, but also their strike zone. And I'm going to use the markers real quick and I'll show you the strike zones here. So our blue is we're going to say the blue is our inactive fish. Okay? So they're going to have a small strike zone, and then you're going to have the neutral fish, which are going to have, it's still relatively small, but it's bigger than the inactive, and then you have your aggressive, actively feeding fish, which is going to be even bigger. Okay? So this is kind of what it's going to look like, and this is why it's important. So you have your inactive fish up here has a very small strike zone. So what that means is you're going to have to drop that bait almost on his head in order to get that fish to react and strike. Now your neutral fish will have a little bit bigger strike zone, so you won't have to get it as close to them. And then your active fish will obviously run down baits and chase whatever it's got to chase. They're going to have that big strike zone, and they're going to be pretty aggressive. So what's the benefit? When you fish cover this way, and I come up to that laydown, and I start catching fish on the edges, now I know the activity level of the fish. I know how close I have to get the bait to the fish to trigger a strike. And now I know in that section of the lake, that's a pattern I can keep going with and put multiple fish in the boat on different laydowns. And you might catch fish on one laydown this way, and you might not catch fish for 2 or 3 laydowns, and then the fourth one you might catch 4 or 5 more. Not every laydown holds fish, but that's a pattern you can run with and put some fish in the boat. And if you hit a couple and it stops working, then you start on a different pattern. You start trying to develop a different pattern. Now, if you're fishing a big lake and you're fishing in this one section, and this is the type of bite you're getting, and all of a sudden you want to go fish more laydowns, but it's a couple miles down the lake, I would probably start over. When I go to fish those laydowns, I'd start and I'd go outside in for the first 3 or 4 good laydowns, just because fish in different parts of the lake are sometimes doing different things. So just because fish in that part of the lake were on the edges doesn't mean fish on the other part of the lake are going to be on the edges. A lot of times in these small lakes, you find a pattern, you can run with it all over the lake. But on these bigger lakes, I would, for the first 3 or 4 laydowns, I'd probably go outside in again and try to figure out what the pattern is for that section of the lake. But the same thing in weeds. Weeds is the same way. Fish outside the weeds, and then if you're not getting anything, move to the edges, and then if they're not on the edges, it's safe to say they're either out suspended or they're going to be deep in the weeds. So you might want to get a punch rig on and start punching through that stuff, and really fishing deep inside the weeds. So you can see how much of a benefit it is to fish this way, because you can obviously you put more fish in the boat, which is great, but it's also giving you valuable information that you can use throughout the lake, throughout other parts of the lake. So this is definitely increase the amount of fish I catch. So hopefully it does the same for you. But thanks for watching. Hope it helps. Take care.